All right, day 6. Here's what we got. We got wide grip pull-up. We got the push-up, standard push-up, and we got the walking lunge. So I supersetted the wide grip pull-up and the push-up with very short rest intervals. I didn't have any time to train today, so I just kind of had to go from one to the other. And you can tell by my third set of push-ups actually have some systemic fatigue going. I'm getting tired and winded, and it was all in all like fairly difficult. So in the walking lunges, I just knocked out in one set. I did 100 or so. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe over 100. You'd have to count, but that'd be boring. This brings up an interesting topic, and that is rest intervals between sets. So how long should you rest? I know some exercise science textbooks, some training manuals, they tell you to rest 60 to 90 seconds, sometimes even as low as 30 seconds for your pump work if you want to maximize metabolic stress. I'm not entirely sure that's optimal. And here's why. I think science right now is leaning more towards this idea that mechanical tension is the primary driver of muscle growth, and metabolic stress might play a secondary role, or it might just be a marker of a sufficient mechanical tension and volume done at a particular repetition range. So for instance, if you work at a little bit higher repetition, just as a byproduct of taking that set to a high RPE, you're going to develop some metabolic fatigue and some metabolic stress. And some people hold this idea that mechanical tension is the only driver of hypertrophy and nothing else really matters. So we need to maximize the amount of mechanical stress that we put on the muscle. And we can maximize the amount of mechanical stress we put on the muscle by either lifting a load that is heavy or by taking a load that's lighter and pushing it towards failure to a high RPE. So you don't have to go to total failure, but a high level of effort, close proximity to failure. Now, if you do a set and you take it to that close proximity of failure and you don't rest sufficiently, you're not going to be able to repeat that effort. You're going to fatigue before you're able to accumulate the same amount of repetitions, unless your work capacity is just absolutely insane, in which case it doesn't really apply to you anyway. So, but for the rest of us, we need sufficient rest to allow us to as closely repeat those performances as possible. Like, you may never repeat, if you hit a set of 20 pull-ups, you may rest 5-6 minutes and only be able to hit 18 on the next one, and rest another 5 or 6 minutes and only get 16 or 17, and that's totally fine. But what you would want to avoid is hitting your set of 20, resting 30 seconds, hitting a set of 12, resting 30 seconds, and then hitting 8. You've just left a lot of repetitions and a lot of higher threshold motor unit recruitment on the table. Because you didn't wait for adequate recovery, you weren't able to access those higher threshold motor units that you otherwise would. And Schoenfeld, 2016, that's a great paper. You can look into this. He studied the effects of higher rest intervals and lower rest intervals on muscular hypertrophy and also muscular endurance. What they found is higher rest intervals, so longer rests, resulted in more muscle mass during the intervention, and no statistical difference in muscular endurance, which is pretty interesting. So you might think that, well, those short rest intervals, they're maximizing metabolic stress, so they're probably going to get the advantage when it comes to muscular endurance, but that's not actually what they found. So with that being said, ideally, if you can, rest sufficiently to allow yourself to perform high quality sets. If you cannot, if you're strapped on time, well, you do what you can, but you can always try to make up some of that lost volume with additional sets. So even if they don't achieve the repetition goal that you had in mind, they still can help you accumulate some potentially valuable and productive volume. So if you have any more questions, let me know. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you tomorrow.